everybody, Trevor here, and I'm back from my hiatus. Now that I'm settled into my new home, we'll be doing another top 5 worst reboots list. Now, the reason why I'm doing this is because there are certain reboots I regret not mentioning in the first place, especially in the honorable mentions. And while these 5 new candidates aren't as bad as those from the last video, they are a close second. Also, like the last video, I won't be including Teen Titans Go nor CGI Fireman Sam because I still think those have potential to be really good. Besides, CGI Fireman Sam is a continuation of the first 5 seasons, not a reboot in my opinion. Now with those things out of the way, let's get this top 5 done and over with, shall we? Number 5, the Bob the Builder reboot. I've included this one in the honorable mentions in the past, so I'll try to keep it brief here. While the voice acting is passable, and so is the fluid animation from the first era of the reboot, but that doesn't excuse the fact that it's a failed attempt of a potential reboot. First of all, the character redesigns look too realistic because in the original, it was meant to look cartoony with cardboard cutout backgrounds and stuff. Secondly, the only realistic things about the original are the life lessons and the construction work and safety. Thirdly, most of the new characters are completely useless, not to mention that they suddenly appeared out of nowhere without an introduction whatsoever. But my least favorite character in the entire reboot is Scoop himself. I mean, goodness gracious, what did they do to Scoop? In the original, Scoop was a sensible and reliable character who follows orders well and tries to keep in charge of the rest of the team. But here, Scoop is an absolute idiot who doesn't even know what he's doing. If you want more information on why this reboot sucks, go watch the popular rant by James A. Williams. However, I've decided to put this as number 5 because I think this reboot had the potential to be good, if it had better writing, characters, and moral execution, that is. Though I still prefer the original stop motion show from the late 1990s in terms of charm. Number 4, The Proud Family Louder and Prouder. This is supposed to be a continuation of the original Proud Family from the early 2000s, and in my opinion, the original Proud Family was one of the greatest Disney Channel shows of the 2000s along with Kim Possible, The Legend of Tarzan, Buzz Lightyear's Star Command, etc. One of my biggest gripes with this reboot is not only the characters like Penny were completely out of character, but it's woke trash. What do I mean by that? Well, for instance, there was an episode where they sing a controversial song about slavery and that they believe that slaves, quote unquote, built this nation. Okay, first off, completely ignoring the fact that there was a famous white president known as Abraham Lincoln who was the one who abolished slavery, and he also cared about the black people in the first place, which explains why he's one of my most favorite US presidents along with George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, and Theodore Roosevelt, just to name some. And furthermore, what I hate most about woke stuff in general is that if you dislike a certain change, example a race swap or a gender bender, then you are both racist and sexist. As a white male, I find that completely offensive. I mean, just because I hate race swapping and gender swapping doesn't automatically mean that I'm racist or misogynistic, okay? Honestly, I wanted to like this new show because they brought back the original voice actors as well as the creator of the show, not to mention the wonderful animation. At least the original Proud Family had likable and relatable characters, and it wasn't that woke in the first place. Also, to be fair, I've seen much better continuations than this. Like, for example, Season 5 of Samurai Jack. Sure, it may not be as good as the first 4 seasons in terms of pacing, but you know what? Scaramouche makes it worth watching in my eyes. The Proud Family Louder and Prouder, on the other hand, just feels so wrong to me. I suggest you stay away from it at all costs. Number 3 are the Brum reboots. I don't know about you, but I loved the original Brum by Ragdoll Entertainment, the same guys who brought us Teletubbies and Booba. What makes the original so much better is its charm, wit, and cool looking live action prop of the main character. But what makes the fully animated reboots fail is that they feel nothing like the source material, and I do mean nothing. Another thing that made Brum so magical in the first place was its realistic setting. But in the first reboot, There's nothing but a white background for the most part, and certain things in the background like a cow or something. Now, in the 2D animated reboot, we do get some background colors like the blue sky, but somehow it's even worse than its predecessor. I mean, that does not look like Brum at all. If you want your kids to see Brum, I suggest you watch the original live action version because it's still 10 times better than these new shows. Number 2 is Reboot, The Guardian Code. When I was a kid, I used to be a big fan of the original Reboot, which was one of the first computer animated shows on television back in the 1990s. It was instantly one of my favorites at the time due to its unique CGI animation, interesting characters, and overall exciting adventures inside the net. But boy oh boy, was this new show one of the most boring messes I've ever seen. First of all, most of the show focuses on these live action characters who aren't really that interesting to begin with. Secondly, the main villain slash hacker, known as the Sorcerer, really, the Sorcerer, just seems too hammy, even for being a hacker. I mean, how am I supposed to be frightened by this guy? And how am I supposed to take him seriously? And furthermore, we suddenly got to see what the user looks like in this show, who turns out to be an annoying man-child fanatic of the original reboot, which is pretty insulting if you ask me. However, despite all the negatives here, there are a few positives. For one thing, the new voice of Megabyte sounds exactly like the late Tony J, though I'm not too keen on his new design. Secondly, and most importantly, at the end of the first season, we finally got to see some fan service, particularly the returning main characters like Bob, Dot, and Little Enzo. However, I find it confusing that Hexadecimal, one of the scariest villains ever created, somehow returned despite sacrificing herself at the end of the Damon Rising TV movie just to save the net. But aside from those positives, this is one of the most boring things I've ever seen in my entire life. It contradicts the important events from the original show, the pacing is too slow, and even plagiarizes Code Lyoko. I recommend the original from the 1990s. Sure, its animation is old and outdated, and it ended on a cliffhanger at the end, but hey, at least it's better than the Guardian Code. Now, before I get to number 1, I just want to give some dishonorable mentions. The Muppet Babies CGI reboot. It's okay, but not as memorable as the original from the 1980s. The Rugrats CGI reboot. I still think this one is so-so as well, but hey, at least there aren't any more useless characters like Dill Pickles. The Ben 10 reboot. It would have easily been number 4, but because I wasn't that into it, even back then, I decided to take it off the list. The CGI Barney reboot. At the time of making this video, this one won't come out until next year in 2024, but I'm hoping it won't be as bad as the original live action version, which was worse than I remember. The CGI Caillou reboot. I refuse to watch this one. And the number 1 spot goes to the Magic School Bus Rides Again. Oh my god, where to start with this one? Well, for starters, the new animation and character designs look terrible. They remind me of the same studio who animated The Adventures of Kid Danger, which I consider one of the worst Nicktoons I've ever seen in my entire life. Secondly, although it was nice that they brought back Lily Tomlin as Miss Frizzle in this show, they only used her once in a while, and that she's mainly replaced by her sister. Why can't you just keep the original Miss Frizzle instead of replacing her for the most part? In addition, the other voices, especially Arnold, just don't sound right to me. Not to mention the new rendition of the theme song, which looks and sounds way off. And the worst part of it is, it doesn't have as much educational value as its classic predecessor. I mean, if you watch the show, you'll see what I mean. While the original wasn't perfect, and it did have some dated moments like the floppy disk episode, but it's still 10 times better than this new show because it had tons of educational value and very likable and interesting characters. In fact, one of my favorites was Dorothy Ann, who usually says, according to my research, once per episode. But here, they make her say it more than once, and it gets annoying really fast. Also, why do we need songs in this? Especially the rap song about poop. Just, just why? The main reason this is number one is because, like All Engines Go, this one also destroyed my childhood. However, unlike All Engines Go, it had the potential to be really good if it had the same exact charm as the original show, that is. So, in conclusion, if you want to experience the Magic School Bus, I suggest you either read the original books or just watch the original cartoon from the 1990s. Trust me, they're worth your time more than this crappy reboot. Now, let me know in the comments section on which of these reboots are your least favorite. Do you agree with my list, or have you seen much worse? And if there's anything I could have done better in this video, please let me know, but be nice about it, okay? This is Trevor the Blue Pony, signing off.